Welcome back to the Mastering Runeterra podcast with Jay and Bay, the number one source for competitive Legends of Runeterra news and information. If you're looking for the best decks to play right now, be sure to check us out on Twitter at Master Runeterra or in our Discord. And if you want to take the next step in leveling up your game, check out our Runeterra team on Patreon, where we do weekly learning calls and one-on-one coaching. Now strap in and grab yourself some Poro snacks, because we are about to start Mastering Runeterra.
Welcome back to the Mastering Runeterra podcast with Jay, Bay, and special guest, The Cup is Mine. Coming off a hot finals finish in the last Runeterra Open. Before we jump into everything, though, I just want to thank all of our subscribers, all of our patrons. Thank you guys for keeping the lights on, especially at Cup's house. As you can see, we've got a big one over there. We got a lot of cool stuff coming for you guys in the next season. Waiting to share some details on that. Looking forward to it. But yes, thank all of you. So, Cup, let's jump into things. I was going to give an intro for you, but I don't want to miss anything. So I'm gonna let you do it. Why don't you give us a rundown? I want to know a little bit about your history, what you did before LOR, how you got into Runeterra, and then give us all of your big runs, Red Pup games, the last week, of course.
Sure. So I got started playing LOR in the middle of COVID. Didn't really play card games competitively beforehand. Maybe Yu-Gi-Oh as a bit as a kid and Pokemon, but that's just like in the early 2000s, just bringing your cards to school and stuff like that, slamming down a Blue Eyes when it came out. That was fun. And that kind of led to me. My brother said, hey, this is kind of like Hearthstone. Why don't you try it? And I was like, okay, sure. I played and I had nothing better to do because we were just stuck inside all the time. And then the first seasonal came around and I happened to do really well. I top cut, same one as Bay in the first one, made top 16, and then kind of just played semi-competitively for about a year and a half afterwards. Never really went all in on being competitive, never kind of knew where to go from there and how to get better because I didn't really interact with anybody in the community, to be honest. I went on Twitch streams every once in a while, but I didn't even know what the heck Discord was for the longest time because I was like, I'm working, I got other stuff going on in my life, and it wasn't really too much. I had gotten away from gaming from a long time. I used to play for contexts like NHL, the EA series, when probably like the first esports that ever came out on it, like in 2009, and played on like one of the top 5 teams in the world at the time.
Oh, wow.
But that was just me playing around in high school and having fun. But I kind of like abandoned video games in university until I picked up LOR again. Then I got approached by Boomer to join Red Pup Games. And I was like, okay, cool. This was like in around March of last year. Joined right before the first seasonal, but then I couldn't really interact with the community too much during it because I was getting married in July. So I couldn't compete until August. And then after the wedding is when I really went all in on being competitive in LOR. And since then, I've played in 5 opens. I've top 4'd 3 of them, top 2'd another 2 of them. So, and then top 16'd another one. And a lot of it just came down to understanding the game, studying all the best players in the game, understanding where are their strengths, where are their weaknesses, why aren't they going far, what are they doing differently that is better than everyone else, and how can I apply that to my own game? Because when I came into Red Pup, I was easily the worst player on the team. It wasn't even close. One of the first scrims that I ever did with Floppy, he 12-0'd me, 12 in a row. And I just kept coming back, and every time this guy just played Aftershock on 2 into my Sundisk, and I was like, I hate myself. But stuff like that really helped me improve, playing with really good players and understanding you're not nearly as good as you think until you drop your ego, play against these guys until you can get to a point that you can play against them really well. So it's been going well. I just got back into competitive about like 2 weeks ago, I'd say, because I had a lot of other stuff going on in my life beforehand that kind of like dropped me out from playing as seriously as I normally would. But 2 weeks ago, I kind of picked it up again. It was like, okay, I want to be that guy again that I was when I top 2'd and top 4. What's it going to take? So that's a little bit of an intro on myself, on some of the accomplishments and what I've done since coming into the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's an absolutely amazing run. Do you say top 4 in the last 3 out of 5? And then
3 of the 5.
And then,
I didn't play in January, so it was the Kaisa season.
You didn't play at all?
Nami Lee. No, I didn't play. I just was like, I don't want to play in this Open, this seasonal, so I just didn't play it. Not Kaisa season, Nami season, and then top 16 in Samira Varas. Didn't make it the other one, and then top 4 this one. No, top 2.
Yeah,
this one.
Yeah, that's an amazing run. So let's talk a little bit about this last run that you just went on in the Open, because I'm also interested, like you say, you just got back into competitive. When you're talking about playing competitively, not playing competitively, like, are you dropping the game like almost entirely when you're like not playing competitively, or are you still kind of just dicking around and having a good time?
I'm still having fun, and I'm like teaming up with the team and like playing.
Okay.
But I think Majin talked about this. Like, there's a difference between when you want to be the absolute best and when you're just playing the game a lot.
Yeah.
And when you want to be the absolute best, the amount of work that takes is absurd. And I don't think that even realistically, I could keep that up over the course of a full year. Someone like Floppy, absolutely, right? Like, that's what they want to do. They go to work, they come back, and they want to be the absolute best. I'm married. I can't be doing that all the time. My wife would kill me if that happened all the time. We talked about this. I can't play I can play this weekend, but I can't play in the Open afterwards because it's a wedding anniversary. So, like, there's things and life that gets in the way. But when I'm talking about being competitive, I mean, like, I'm going to scrim the matchups against the best players, and I'm going to learn how to win every single one as best as I can. And my framework for the game has to be, like, on point and thinking through things like, not just like what's happening now, but visualizing what the game's going to look like 4 to 5 turns ahead of time, and being able to understand what's in your hand right now. How are you playing? What are you doing? And what does your hand say that you're going to do in 5 turns from now? And how do I start playing around that from turn 1? Compared to like when I'm playing casually, I'm struggling turn to turn, okay? Like, to figure out what's going on. But when I'm all in and like fully thinking about it, even with an aggro deck from turn 1, understanding like your mulligan and what that means from the moment you play a chemist, like the 2/1 that drops a bomb, and what it means and what turn it needs to be played on so that you can activate a pirouette in 4 turns so that you can combo them out and kill them right away. Like little things like that. That's what the main difference is for me.
Yeah. And I mean, that's exactly what you have to be doing to be the best. And I think people don't understand, you know, when we're talking about the kind of time commitment that you have to put in, like you're talking about like one matchup, and you're talking about like just you said now from your mulligan all the way to, you know, turn 6 or turn 8 or whatever, and you're like branching out all the different plays you can make, all the different plays they can make, the different sequencing that can happen, and like these decision trees branch out like almost forever. It's kind of crazy. You do over time start to pull it together and start to figure out the very likely lines, the ones that are very important, the ones that lead to you winning, to you losing, but that takes a lot of time, and that's one matchup versus one deck, not even including all the other decks you have to face, not even including your other 2 decks versus all the other decks, not even including if you want to do that for other decks that you then want to test out that maybe go into your lineup. It's there's literally not enough time in the day. Yeah, it's so much. So bring us through a little bit. You said you got back into it competitively 2 weeks ago. 1, what made you come back? 2, what does your testing kind of look like? And 3, how did you end up on triple aggro?
So every single one of my runs has been preceded with me getting pissed off about something.
I feel that.
Like, no matter what, it's always I get mad and I want to do something about it. So the first time ever was just I was mad I wasn't a good player. Like, that was the truth. I was just mad. I didn't feel I told this to MTux. We got 3-0'd in Aegis by him, and I felt that was one of the most embarrassing things that could have happened to us as a team. The team disbanded, and I said, that's never happening to me again. I'm never going to go into an event where I feel I want to be competitive, and I just get absolutely rocked like that. The second time was Nami Lee season, and I think there was a bunch of Nami and Lee players who went on Twitter and said, thanks for giving me the free Open win. And I said, I take anything personally. It's not even about me, but I was just like, you know what? Nah, none of you are going to win this time. I said, I'm going to win instead. And I ended up pulling top 4 ahead of like most of the people who made any sort of comments on that. And I played Nami Lee too, because people thought I didn't know how to play Ionia, or how to play combo. And I was like, you know what? I'll learn to play combo and I'll do better than them with it. And then this time, our team got embarrassed in Aegis, went 3-0. I told them they were playing sloppy and that if this kept up, we wouldn't keep up our streak of basically making a top 4 every single season since Red Pups has been a team. So I was mad at this time internally at our own process and our own team, and said, okay, I'm going to step up and I'm going to go forward and go and try and do that. The second part, what was your second part? I know the last one.
What is your? So you said you scrim a lot. What does your like sort of testing process look like? Like how long are you trying out all the different decks, getting a feel for them, and then when are you sort of trying to put a lineup together? When are you actually doing scrims? And when you do decide to scrim, what kind of other lineups are you then choosing to scrim against? Are you letting your opponent, your teammates, kind of just pick what they want? Or are you asking them like, I want you to play this, and this deck? Like, what's that look like?
I don't think it's too dissimilar to what anybody does when it's like, I want to know how this matchup plays out. I want to know what cards you have and understanding the theory behind every single deck in the meta. So it's more, I need to get a feel, but I need to get a feel against good players. I can't just go on ladder because if I play against what the matchmaking system as is against a bunch of like silvers and like bronzes, that's not really
even against
going
a lot
to
of
get me a
masters.
good understanding. No comment.
I've made the most boneheaded plays in the last like couple months, and I'm like, I hope this guy doesn't know who I am. Just like leaving 5 damage on the table for no reason. I'm playing on my phone while I'm like cooking food or something. I'm like, I suck.
Well, there's a difference between kind of just playing the game and then also like, really testing and honing in, right? So that's another thing of like what Cup was saying. Like when you're playing on ladder, even if you're playing against like, Majin or Kever or like even Floppy, whoever, you don't know how well they know that deck, how well they know that matchup, and how much they're actually trying. Whereas when you're doing dedicated testing, you have a much more of a grip on that.
Like, let me put it this way. I didn't play triple aggro in the open rounds. I played 3 decks that I just wanted to have fun with. Nasus, Jax, and
okay, I didn't know that.
Scion.
Okay.
No. So I just played those 3. And I just knew Nasus is like probably 30% into Samira Seraphine, and I went 4-1 into it because I just knew the matchup inside out and how to win it and what you need to do. So it's really when you're going into it, it's about deliberate practice and understanding how to play to win the game instead of how to play to like not lose, and knowing your outs and knowing from step 1 in your mulligan what cards do you need. Because I've said this before, but if you know how to mulligan a deck like to perfection, it's like adding a 0 mana draw 2 to your deck. It's so messed up because you start with 2 impactful cards more, or get a chance to draw 2 more, sometimes 3 or 4 than your opponents do. And I've seen, even if we go into like when I arrived at triple aggro, I've seen people on stream say, oh, aggro is very simple, or aggro does this. I was watching a Drizzot stream, for example, the other day, okay, not to call the guy out, but in the first 2 turns, there were about 3 mistakes that were made already within the first 2 turns, from 2 cards that were kept in the mulligan to which card was played on turn 1 instead of the other, to whether or not to open attack or develop on turn 2. And if you're not honed in on really what your practice and how to really do the counting math from all the way to 20 down and what impacts the matchup, you're not going to do well with a lot of stuff because you just don't know how to win bad matchups. So that goes to number 3. How do I arrive on triple aggro? I had the absurd thinking that I could beat Samira Seraphine. In retrospect, after playing the deck this week, that was stupid. But until the finals, I hadn't lost to it all weekend. I beat it every single time. I was 10-0 until the finals, 2-0'd every Samira Seraphine player, burnt them out every single time, and was able to get to where I needed to be because I understood the matchup better than my opponents did. And I understood exactly what cards I needed when I needed them. And, drawing double rear guard really does help a lot of times in your openings.
Yeah. Do you attribute some of that run to your opponents perhaps, making mistakes like during their mulligans or during the game? Or did you just kind of go on a hot run?
Of course. It's both. I think Runeterra ultimately, if you know how to watch and analyze the games, the best players in the world, when they're fully on their game, are making about 2 to 3 mistakes every game, including Floppy. Floppy's 2 runs where he won and went first were probably some of the best examples of high-quality gameplay I've seen outside of watching, let's say, Teddy play. And even in those games, when we go back and look at them, there's about 2 to 3 mistakes probably every single game that were made. And that when your opponents are making mistakes, usually, like the average person in Top Cut's probably going to make around 4. And then your average Masters player is probably going to make 8+ in a single game. So when I look back at those games, a lot of them was I drew extremely well. I knew how to play, and I made less mistakes than my opponents. That's what it came down to. And if you look at the finals, I made more mistakes probably in my last game than I did in my entire run before that. So it was like a brutal game that was played horrifically. But yeah, I think I ran hot, obviously. You have to run hot if you're going to make a good run. Like, that's just the reality of it. Sometimes you can play really well and you just don't draw what you need. But when you draw hot, you still got to make sure that you make less mistakes than your opponents do.
Yeah, 100%. And if anything, I bet you're actually being generous. I bet Floppy in that run, most Top Cut players, most Masters players, I bet they're making even more mistakes than the numbers you gave. It's just that we are also making mistakes when analyzing play. And so for anyone listening to this at home, like imagine that. In Runeterra is a game of, just inches, right? Like you slip up once, you make one mistake, you do one thing wrong at one time, it could be the smallest thing. Use 1 extra mana, you don't bank a mana, you don't play a spell when you should have, you pass when you shouldn't have, and that could be it. That could be the end of the game. And we're talking about, the people at the top making 5+ of these mistakes every single game. You can see where there's edge to be had, and what makes the game like sort of so complex. And so if you're at home and you're wondering why you're not winning or why you're not as good as the people at the top, it's because you're making even more mistakes than that, and you have to start plugging these holes by like Cup said, one good way is to watch people that are very good at playing. But it's wild, right? Isn't it wild that the game seems very simple? I remember when I came to it for Magic, I was like, oh, this is watered down Magic. It's just like a few units, can't even gain life. There's like barely a stack. You can't counter creatures. There's no text on anything. It just has like First Strike or Trample or whatever. And yet somehow the game is infinitely more complex because of that. Because you have like these limits on it and you have to like plan things out. What do you guys think? I think it's spell mana. I think spell mana is like the big thing that differentiates it from a lot of games. Yeah?
Spell mana adds a lot of complexity to the game.
Yeah.
And the priority system.
Yeah. So spell mana is a really unique one. In most games, you just have your mana for like the turn, and then that's it, and it's over. The ability to bank it for future turns is where it makes all this planning super complex and unique. Because now you're able to you can cast a 7 mana spell on turn 4, or you can do something more powerful later on, and it changes the game totally compared to a lot of other games. Hats off to whoever came up with that. I feel like that's something we haven't talked about in a long time. Spell mana kind of OP. Okay, so sorry. So you're going into day 2 of the Open. You brought triple aggro because you thought you could beat up on Samira Seraphine. And you no longer hold that viewpoint?
I think if you want to beat it, it is the best option to do it.
Okay.
Whether or not that's the best option in general that you should be doing is still a question I am asking myself going into this Open, because that deck is so dumb. I decided to actually play it this week because after I got second, I was like, okay, I actually need some ladder points now. If I'm going to do well at the Open this week and qualify for Worlds, I do need some ladder points. So I was like, let's use this as an opportunity to learn the deck and understand the deck. And it's really dumb. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing half the time, but I won like 80% of my games. And I was like, oh, okay. Imagine, I was like, I'm very curious now what my opponent's hands look like that they were losing to me because I don't know how. other than like very aggressive openers on the other side that translated into burn, and that you somehow don't have your mulligan didn't work the way that you want, and you don't have your removal pieces early. Those were like the only real outs that I found to beating it from the other side and from playing on this side. But I don't know, decks tell me good. Like, it's just stupid.
You were in my stream all the time. You constantly heard me say that I think it's the best deck, and you never tried it.
Like, I had my teammates try it, right?
Yeah.
I had like other stuff that I was responsible for trying and making sure that things are good. A lot of players say a lot of stuff is good all the time, and will like DM and say like, this is the best deck, but this is the best deck, but this is the best deck. So I have to take everything with a grain of salt outside of it. It was very strong, and you can see why my opinion changed this week.
It's very good.
Maji, you hear that?
What?
That's gonna roast you. Never mind. Keep going.
Yeah, it's very good. A lot of people did that. I feel like where they're like, oh yeah, this deck's pretty good, and then post open, they're like, oh wait, this deck's really good. Like, there's a couple decks that I don't want to see on the other side of the field, but usually because if they hit their draw and I don't hit my draw, then I lose. Like, things have to go well for them and not good for me, which is usually a hallmark of like a really, really strong deck.
Yeah, I think also, so like I was playing a lot of Samira Bar, and it kind of didn't. Samira Bar was pretty easy, right? You just kind of kill their shit, you drop a Bar, eventually you drop a Samira, you just bury them in card advantage.
Seraphine?
Easy.
Seraphine Bar?
Seraphine, sorry.
I do the same thing, yeah.
Oh, every time. And so when I first picked it up, Samira Seraphine, I was playing it kind of similarly. I was like, hey, kind of kill their stuff, and then I was kind of like, oh, wait, what am I supposed to do now? Like, I have these like kind of weird cards in kind of a weird order. And so the deck does play out a little bit uniquely, you know, like it doesn't have like infinite late game, for instance, like you would see in a lot of Seraphine decks. It also has like a combo element to it where you want to be setting up these really big turns. And then you also have to sort of understand, you know, because like if you just go like one or two Plaza Guardians or something, like that's not going to get the job done against a lot of decks, right? Like you have to know how kind of, I was going to say deep, but like how into the combo you need to go. Like how many of these Plaza Guardians you're going to need on what turn. A lot of times you need to start planning that out like from the mulligan. Whereas you can see a lot of players kind of playing it like a normal deck. Like, oh, I don't know, my opponent's playing whatever deck with units, and I'm going to keep like a Mystic Shot and like some other card that's sort of a Rummage or something that does something. But you do need to understand, you know, the mulligan is extremely important in that deck because you are going to need the right pieces at the right time. And so it's easy to see how like Cup would just beat up on a bunch of people that maybe didn't know how to play the deck really well, or people would pick it up, not really understand how to play it correctly, get beat by it or playing it, and then kind of be like, maybe this isn't the best deck in the format.
Are you going to be playing it this weekend in the Open?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
Yeah.
Like, I played like 60 games on ladder of it in the last like few days, and it's just turbo busted. I think one of the things that people get baited by with the deck is they see the region combo colors. They see Noxus, they see PZ, and their brain immediately thinks, oh, it's a Flock deck. It's a Disintegrate deck. And I'm like, look, stop thinking about it that way. Think about it as if it's a Shurima Ionia deck, and you will play it so much better because you will immediately start thinking that this is a combo deck and I need to play for my combo and how I'm going to kill you instead of how I'm going to survive all the time. Because some people just like, oh, I can just keep surviving, keep playing late, and they're just like, they're dirtling around with spells without understanding that the question that you ask yourself, and it's very similar to when we kind of figured out Samira Varus, was every single turn you can ask the question, can I kill my opponent this turn? And a lot of the times, the answer is yes. And you should just go in on it because they can't counter it. You have so many 0 mana threats in that deck. You're playing cards nonstop for free, and you're just doubling up on value. And if your opponent somehow has an answer to all of it, you're probably going to win on the next turn. So it's one of those ones where I think if people got out of that mindset of thinking this is a control deck or whatever and really honed in on the fact that it's a combo deck and thought about how do I kill my opponent on it and leverage all these spells in the early game to basically ramp up by the end game, right? Because it's almost like a ramp deck in that way, in that it plays everything for free later on and doubles up all its value, they play a lot better with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. It does feel kind of like an Ionia sort of combo deck where you have that like lots of interaction, you can do powerful things, but like you're not going to do that for forever. Like there is some sort of point where you kind of peter out of things. So you have to just do the big thing, interact with your opponent a bunch, do the big thing, kill them, not just like try to grind them out somehow. What else? So what else do you guys think is good right now? I played a bunch of Rise for the first time, and that deck surprised the fuck out of me. I was used to old Rise. That was kind of this dirtily thing that if you just played some dudes, like you were just going to run them over, or even just like some cards in any combination because they were slow and they kind of sucked. This new Rise deck, though, is like, I'm not sure if I dropped a game with it. I beat Burn decks, I beat Anti-Jin decks, I beat Scion decks, decks with rallies. Literally, I beat everything. I was shocked by just how good it was.
Yep. There's not a single deck that... No, okay, that's not true. I was going to say, there's not a single deck that beats Rise if Rise hits well. Like, if two decks draw well, Rise usually wins. There's a couple, actually, that I think are better. But the problem I've been having with Rise lately, because I was really high on Rise, too, in the Open, and I did bring it in the Open, and then did not bring it in Top Cut. Because the problem I was having with Rise is, like, it was losing me games. Like, I would have, I would have shuffled 16 extra Delves into my deck and I drew 7 cards and I didn't see one. Just stuff like that where it was just like, oh my God, like if I was just playing a normal deck, I would have won this game. Or like if I had just, drawn what I needed to draw, I would have won this game. But then you also get like just free games with Rise. You're like, oh, I have 2 Delves in my opener and an Entreat. Like, cool, I win this game. And that's really nice, but it is really hard for me to play decks that feel like I'm giving up equity, which is usually why I play Ionia, is because I feel like I have a lot of equity in Ionia mirrors. I get to interact with stuff on board, even if that's like an illusion, right? Even if I still have equity playing like a burn deck or whatever, I feel like my decisions matter more when I play an Ionia deck. That's why I play Ionia decks. But Rise feels like a step in the other direction for me sometimes.
Yeah, I can see that because you're kind of locked into doing certain things, right? Like you don't have as much.
You can't play a normal
options in Agency. Yeah.
Tank played against Tie Guy in Top Cut, and I think he drew. I think he was saying 1 to 2 Delves, and he had 16 cards left in his deck against Karma SI.
Yeah, I was looking at Tie Guy's lineup, not to like. Tie Guy won the event, so like, congrats. Obviously, it worked out. I think that if you would have shown me that lineup, I'd be like, "There's no shot this lineup wins." Like
that lineup shouldn't have beat me, but we can go. Like, it took 5 minutes for me to beat Rise in the first round in top 64 against Samson, and then my brain went to poop in the last game against him with Pirates. I don't know what happened there. Sometimes you just blank out after a long day.
I mean, that's a long weekend.
I don't know if like that Karma deck is any good, to be honest with you, at this point. With what the field looks like, I think it's a classic bait deck in general. It happened. I wasn't going to leave it up, obviously. Karma SI against aggro is just freaking miserable. But I don't know. That deck seems like it loses to a lot of other stuff in general. But I think what you were saying... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Monty.
You could finish your thought, and then I'll harp on Karma SI.
Just go ahead.
Okay. So I played a lot of Karma. I played a lot of Spooky Karma. I played a lot of PNZ Karma. I played all the Karmas. Karma is rough right now. Karma SI is rough. I played like Go Hardless, whatever. Any version you want, I played it. Karma SI, the reason I put it down is because it cannot beat Rise. Full stop. You cannot beat it. You cannot beat Plaza Guardian. I almost got lucky and beat it in like the Mastering Runeterra tournament, but it's not a good matchup. You can't beat normally can't beat the broad main decks because you can't turn the corner quick enough to kill them, and they're burning you out. Like on the stack, right? It's going to happen like in one moment. They're going to pie toss. They're going to save their second halves. They're going to keep their Blade's Edge if they know what they're doing, and their Poke Sticks, and each of them is going to be for 4. And then you're going to die. And then it has its classic bad matchups, right? Like it can't beat Poppy decks. And I was just looking at this like matchup spread, and I was like, man, there's so many things that I just cannot beat with this Karma SI deck. You are too slow, and you cannot interact well enough. What's up?
I got an interesting thought.
Okay.
I would love to have seen how often Karma actually got banned. because I was playing way back, like, I don't know, weeks ago. I was playing Karma PNZ still when you guys were like, you can't play that deck, it's not a deck. I'm like, nah, I'm still beating everyone. And so I would load into Gauntlets, and it would get banned like 4 out of 6, 5 out of 6. People just didn't want to play against Karma. So I wonder, like, if that somehow played to Tai Guy's strengths, and people were just like, fuck Karma. I don't want none of that.
Could be. People really don't like SI Karma in particular, I feel like, because they're like, the removal lines up against me sometimes, and that sucks. But like that deck's clunky.
Here's the thing, though.
A lot of people don't know how to play against a lot of clunky lists, right? They respect that their opponent has everything
All the time,
at every
yeah.
given time, which just is playing in a lot of cases to lose the game, and not understanding when can I put my chips in and when do I have to hold back. Because when you hold back against Karma's just like, you pass, I'll pass too.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Yes, please, more mana so that we can get closer to my turn.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing, though. So we're talking about Tai Guy's lineup. So we're like, yay. Samira Seraphine, good. Karma, bad. The third deck he played was what? Jax Ornn.
No, it was Rise.
Oh, it was Rise. Okay, so Rise bad. So we're like, okay, we got one.
It's just like
Rise
it's
inconsistent, perhaps.
Yeah. It's when you build a lineup, a lot of the times you have to ask yourself, what's the potential for me to high roll and how much equity do I want? And in a lot of cases where you give up some equity in your decision making, you give yourself the opportunity to just win because you're playing super powerful, something that's like inherently unbeatable. So Rise has that, right? Which was what Majin was saying earlier, where sometimes you don't have the equity and sometimes you do. And when you're trying to win a tournament against that many good players, sometimes you just have to say, you know what? Agency be damned. I got to put my chips in, and this is the way it's going to go because I can't control everything.
Yeah,
that goes along that way. So I think Tai Guy made a gamble with that. But we saw a lot of people make that gamble and then just get like steamrolled as well.
Yeah, fair enough. That was kind of the point that I was trying to get at. Was like, there's that lineup that won, and then there's your lineup that's triple aggro, and then and then there's Bear's lineup that is the kind of like mid rangey. It's like a Felios, Victor,
Sure.
Jax Ornn, and then Samira Seraphine was the third deck. And then in EU, I didn't know this until just recently. It was triple timelines that won. Did you guys know that?
I saw it beforehand. JO1 was a lot of the inspiration behind the lineup that I brought. He came second in APAC, where he was on Jax Ornn, Pirates, and Draven Scion as well. So like the aggro performed really well in APAC, non-existent in EU, and then did well again in the Americas.
Speaking of aggressively slanted decks, have you seen the Draven Samira more low to the ground all in burn version?
Oh, that's the one I played.
Oh, that one's.
I just call it Scion.
Okay, yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know why people would play Scion still. That deck's the shit. Like, that deck kills people.
It just, that's the point. You kind of just want the one Scion as top end, and then in some matchups, he's a combat trick that gives you overwhelm.
Okay.
Like,
So I wanted to get into the like, what's actually good, because like we have basically like 5 different, I don't know what came second in EU, but like more or less 5 different lineups out of the 6 finalists, which is kind of fucking wild. How crazy is that? That so many different things did well. And so what do you guys attribute that to? Is that like the different metas on the different shards? Is it because the win percentages are kind of close? Is it because the field was just wide open and nobody really knew what was good? Some combination of those. Like, what's going on? And also, I want your thoughts on like where things are headed into this Saturday.
I think a lot of it is there's some matchup roulette going on in not on ladder so much, because if you play ladder, just play one of the top 3 decks and you can rip like a great win percentage. But in the tournament format, there's some polarized matchups that if you run into a counter, you're kind of just like duped at that point, like you're done. So if you played out that tournament and from the weekend and shuffled the seedings, I'm pretty sure it goes differently.
Yeah.
And a lot of people go farther and a lot of people don't go as far, myself included. I knew when I brought triple aggro, for example, that if I ran into like a counter lineup, I was a little bit screwed unless my opponent misplayed, which I got lucky in the top 8 where they definitely did. But that was just the reality of it. And I think that's going to continue, especially in Top Cut heading into this weekend, where you're going to have to make a bet and you're going to have to give up a lineup concession somewhere and then hope that you get there. Because the overall good Dex lineup, which was the Aphelios, Jax Ornn, and Samira Seraphine, that was the only one that showed up consistently. I think it was in like 2 of the 6. And if you go into the top 8s in each region, showed up a lot more, even beyond that. That's going to have a huge target on its back, obviously, this time around as well. Specifically, the last 2 decks. You could try and target Samira Seraphine. I just don't think that's a particularly sound strategy. Yes, not enough.
That's how it always is, though. With decks that are like super, super good, is like you can technically target them. It's just like, is that really where you want to be?
There's been times where it's worked, like Floppy, obviously, when he did his run into Nami Lee and he brought like Annie Jin, Azir, Aurelia, and like one of them,
like
and
Yasuo.
Yasuo.
Yeah.
Right? That in specific testing, we found that it worked. But I think this deck is just way ahead of that in terms of power level.
It's faster and more proactive.
And more resilient.
And more, it has more answers to things.
It's just there's just so much card draw on that deck that's just like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to play 10 cards this turn. Good luck.
I was a big fan of showing up to beat Jax Ornn. I really like that. Like, I liked the Seraphine Broadbane shell. I thought that felt pretty good. The problem I was having was the third deck. Like, the third deck that slotted in was Rise. It just works. But I'm having a Rise identity crisis or whatever right now. So we'll see if I end up bringing it again. I don't know. This Open's going to be interesting because I'm going to show up and play the Open off basically 0 games all week because I have the Box challenge. And I have like so many like IRL things going on over the next like 2 weeks that I'm so busy. So I'm going to be like TFT, do all my IRL stuff. And then I'm just going to be like, okay, and Open now. Just like pick the 3 decks I want to play, and I'm going to play them. We'll see how it goes.
Cup, what do you think of the Jax Ornn deck? It was the most played deck in Top Cut.
It's a good deck. I played a lot of it after the Open just to check on it again and make sure that it was still good. Ripped an 80% win rate on it. Felt good. I was like, okay, well, there's a lot of agency in play here to how you do it. Obviously, very different than the other decks. I think there's probably, outside of Control, there's probably one deck of every archetype at the very least that you can go on ladder and absolutely like just blast it with right now. And Jax Ornn is, or at least one of those big Freljord style decks with Ornn in it, is very, very strong at doing that.
Yeah, big dude Demacia-esque. Beat you up, combat
tricks. But there is no Demacia in the meta right now, actually. It's actually really weird.
That's
every deck
why
is
I like this
Demacia
meta.
and Jason.
I couldn't figure it out.
No one's
crying inside.
There's like Lulu Poppy, which nobody plays.
It's so bad.
Is it bad? Okay, because it's like
it's just bad.
It's incredible into Broadbane.
It's just that's because it just has the Rangers Resolve card, right?
It's
There's
good
only
enough,
like one deck that could use Rangers Resolve, and it just so happens, and you flip a coin. Do I get the Rangers Resolve or not? If I don't get it, I may as well just like just FF and just like not play the game.
You're playing.
It's one of those decks I don't think has like a lot of people with a really high win rate on it, right? Where that you're able to express a ton of agency beyond that. The band of skill, like compared to other Demacia decks like Aatrox, where you can go really high with it in standard, anyways, not in Eternal. With Lulu Boppy, it's just like, okay, what flip?
Do I get it or do I not? I talked about that previously, I think, on this podcast, where it's like I go to Master Runeterra AR, and I see how the best performing players on each given deck are doing. And if they can't, like, if the deck has like a 56% win rate, which is really high in non-Eternal metas, and then the winningest player, you know, like the top players or whatever, have like 67%, I just won't even bother picking up the deck. Like, it's not even worth it.
Yeah. That was a big eye opener for me. That's not something that I had ever thought about, really. Which leads me to another question I kind of want to ask you guys about. So in Magic, Cup, I know you haven't played a lot of other card games, so you know this might be different for you or whatever. But so in Magic, there's not good stats like at all because you can't get information from the API. So literally all there is like there's tournament stats of like a few small tournaments. There's like one website that has a tracker. So anyone that uses the tracker, they pull their data. And so they have like, some hundreds of games, but it's small. It's just a win percentage. It's not even like a matchup grid against like other decks or anything. So the information out there is almost non-existent a lot of the time. So you're really going off of like pros, people that are paid to write, and what they're saying, streamers. Your own testing becomes very important. A lot of vibes.
Vibes is always
basically everyone's wrong. Basically everyone's wrong. So you show up at these big pro tours, these huge events with like hundreds of thousands of dollars on them, and all the pros are like, "What'd you bring? What'd you bring?" I don't know. And it was like, let's see who's right. Everyone thinks they're right. No one knows. Kind of like the Eternal Open last weekend, where everyone thought they were right, or the Mastering of Runeterra maybe even the week before. Everyone thought they were right, and then Triple Timelines was like, "We're right." But everyone thought they were right on a bunch of different decks. But it's really interesting, though, in that it creates a totally different dynamic. People brew a lot more. There's a lot like different card choices in deck lists. I feel like people are more engaged with the formats because they have to be, or with the content creators for sure, with the streamers and the YouTubers, and also the websites, because that's where you have to get your information from. And so everyone's watching, everyone's trying to figure it out. Whereas, we have our system where we have all the information, some of it better than others. It's still, not perfect or anything, but it changes things quite a bit. And I was curious what you guys thought, if it's for the better or worse, because I've always wanted more information. I find it super fun. I love it. But at the same time, there's like, when I'm going back to Magic now and I have to figure it out myself and I have to do all the digging, I'm like, I kind of like it. And so I don't know.
Both. I get both because Flesh and Blood and Legend of Runeterra, and it's really nice to have both of them. Yeah, because I get frustrated with one or the other.
And then you switch back and forth.
Yeah, but if I had to pick one, I want more stats. I like to make an informed decision.
I think TFT is a good example of this right now because they're taking down a lot of the stats.
What's that? I've never heard of that game.
From Tactics.
Are they? I didn't know about this. Tell me.
Yeah. So they're taking it down, and as someone like myself, I'm more of a casual player, but I like playing competitively. Like when I play a game, I like to play to win, right? That's just my MO when I'm going in. And with TFT for the longest time before Tactics.tools came out, I didn't really want to play too much. Like I played for fun, had a good time, and then I'd get frustrated because I didn't know why I was winning or losing.
Yeah.
I'd have to dig into streams. I'd have to go and dig into other stuff. And that's a lot of work when you're trying to play Runeterra at the same time and have like multiple games going on. But once I found Tactics.tools, I was able to go in and look at, I was just picking really bad augments. And I had no idea. And it was a balance issue. But unless I'm watching a ton of streams or a ton of pros, I'm not going to find that out. And the vast majority of the player base, someone like me, I don't have time to do that all the time, right? Like I'll have it on in the background while I'm doing work, might engage a little bit. But like to actually fully focus and try and learn from a stream rather than be entertained by the stream, those are two very different things. So for myself, with TFT, I know that my play rate is going to go down once Tactics.tools goes down because I really don't want to be in a situation where I commit to a 40-minute game and one decision on stage 2-1, for example, gets messed up because I chose something that has a 5.0 placement instead of a 4.0, and it was impossible for me to know otherwise.
It's also
so bringing that back to card games, if I'm a new player and all of a sudden nobody tells me that Poros suck, but Poros look cool. Man, I'm just going to go in, get absolutely shit kicked by all these meta decks, feel bad about myself, and then just not want to play the game anymore. And that player experience part where you're playing bad stuff, but you don't know why you're losing and you don't know why things are happening are some of the biggest breaking points. I obviously understand the perspective of we don't want people to solve the meta too fast and feel that it's actually converged before it has because there's a hive mentality around things that this is the best and no one wants to experiment because it's already doing so well. I get that because there's a problem with people knowing how to interpret data and how to interpret stats. That goes down to like the American education system kind of fucking sucks on that respect and teaching people on how to analyze data. But I think more information in general is good if you want to open up your audience as wide as possible.
Yeah, it's nice. It's also like if you play a game, like for example, I played League really hard for like one season. I was introduced to League during like season 8, season 9, and I played really, really hard for one season. And then now I play League once a month with my buddies while I have a drink at midnight, right? And I wouldn't want to do, but so what I do is we go into League and I look at a site. I go to u.gg and I click the tier list and I see what champions are performing well and what I'm supposed to build on them. And if I couldn't do that, the whole experience is just much less fun because I can't just casually jump into a game and have something that at least levels the playing field a little bit for me, right? Because then I'm picking a champ that's bad right now. They just got nerfed. I'm putting the wrong items on them. I'm so far behind. I don't even play this game, right? Like, it just puts you. It stretches the gap you need to like fill between people who are really taking this seriously and you who just kind of wants to mess around and have a good time. And so yeah, I'm definitely a fan of more stats. TFT is kind of tough, especially with like augments and stuff, is because card games you can usually do a decent job. I know we like to all meme and stuff, but you could usually do a pretty good job evaluating cards, right? And in TFT, it's tough. There's an augment that's literally just called like a ton of stats or something, and it just gives you like a random number of various stats, and I have no idea if it's good or not. Absolutely no clue, and I'll never figure it out. I'll never know unless like one of the sites tells me that it's good or not, because like I can't take. I don't know how good.
Can't dig into how much damage each person's doing per auto attack, how much mana they're generating. So I'm like, man, like I don't play the game that much, like.
Yeah, so why are they shutting off? Is it like all stats, some stats? Like what's going on?
I think it's augment stats. At least to start.
I'm not sure. I don't know exactly which ones. I know augment stats are being taken down. A lot of it, I think, was because people were basically using the site, looking up the augment stats, and just picking the highest one.
Like every
right,
game.
like what's
in
the
live
one?
While they're playing.
In live, streamers would be doing it. Everyone would be doing it. I do it. And they're like, oh, but sometimes that's not the right decision because like of certain situations, like when you combine it with your spot and having this, like these units on the board, this one's better, things like that. So they're like, we want people to experiment more and solve the meta basically less quickly and like converge less. That was the logic from what I understood. I didn't read Mortdog's entire post, but I don't know. I just looked at that and was like, I felt like I was being slapped in the face a little bit.
The augments are also like pretty impossible to balance.
Yep.
So I think if you just hide it, then it gets a little less. It matters a little bit less.
They're like, we want skill expression is what they're saying, right? We want people to figure it out on their own. But like, there are how many hundreds of thousands of combinations that you can do together. Unless you're playing as a professional full time, that's very difficult to do.
I still don't get TFT. I've like tried playing it. I understand it. I love drafting. Like in Magic, I can't wait for a limited format coming soon, right? September, right?
That's the whole game.
Right. And that's the whole game, apparently. But like, I don't understand how the game works properly. I've like, I don't know, try to just like push my way through it. I watched some videos. I kind of get it. Like Cup was saying though, I don't know any strategy, so I also lose, and then I'm like, fuck this. But I'm shocked that the game, because like it's not intrinsic. I guess did a lot of people come from like auto chess or like other auto battler games? Because to me,
they didn't exist. TFT was like the third auto battler like period.
Yeah, right. So like for me, like you pick up a game like I don't know, like a first person shooter like Valorant. Like okay, you point, you click, you run. Like it's not that hard. Even a card game, you like drag the thing onto the screen. Okay. But like, I don't know, with TFT, it's like, so I guess I just haven't played a lot of auto battlers, but like you said, it's like the third one or whatever. I'm just shocked that people are so into them. Also because
card games on crack.
Yeah. Well, because like
in a lot of cases,
there's super annoying people like Majime who like don't apparently like limited, even though it's the best format ever. But yet this is basically limited without the actual playing of stuff. People do like drafting though. Like sports drafts are like fucking huge, right? So I get that.
So I think I don't like limited because like it's a lower power format, and I like the consistency of bringing what I like. I like to guarantee that I get to play something I like.
Formats.
I love high power formats. Now TFT is both a low power to high power format. It's it's a progression.
Because you
start with a draft deck, and you end up with like tier 0 legacy. Like you do busted shit. But you're all trying to get there, and so you're all trying to just make this super super high powered insano. It's kind of like you ever played Slay the Spire, where you end up with a storm deck. It's like that, but you're all playing a storm deck in a PvP game, and it's cool. And sometimes this guy hit his
kind of
busted
sold me
stuff
on
early.
it. You kind of sold me on it with the like starting week and then like building strong. That's like that sounds pretty appealing.
It's pretty fun. Yeah, it's a good time.
It's just, if you look at it from a game design perspective, it just gives you so many choices and things to do, and then a lot of colors on the screen flashing and people fighting. It just hits all the dopamine markers. Yeah. You have like all the traits on the left side, and you're like, "Ooh, nice colors, more traits, fill them out." Yeah. Like number go up, health go up, gold go up, spend money. The roll downs, the dopamine hit when you just like spend all your money to get cards. Like it's exhilarating, and that's why like a lot of the people that came from there are a lot of ex-Hearthstone people who basically stopped playing card games and like transitioned over to playing auto battlers and whatnot, because it hit all the markers that they wanted from a card game, but in a different way that like combined it with like some of their favorite IPs.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's good. You have to sit there and like devote some time to it though.
Yeah. I have like a little bit. I'm like on the cusp. I need someone just to be like, this
sit
is
down
this,
and be
this
like,
is
you
this,
do this because of this. You do this
is
because of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is why this is happening.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. For some reason, I can't believe fucking Runeterra community. I can't believe how many people are upset about Eternal. This is shocking to me because so many people were just upset about them rotating cards at all, which meant you were playing Eternal. So like, what the actual F? And two, other than I guess we're missing some Demacia decks, which I'm not crying about. The format
Jax
looks wide as hell. The format's crazy wide open. You got like new types of archetypes we've never seen. Jax is seeing play. Like I didn't even know that was a champion still. I thought they just like deleted him or something. Like we're just talking about, there's like what, 5 different decks, triple time lands. I don't know if you count that as different decks or whatever, but like this is probably one of the most wide open metas we've like ever had, going back to like the first seasonal when no one knew what was good and everyone just kind of played Wild West shit. And it's fun. I've been having so much fun playing this format. Rise is seeing play. I don't know. Format seems absolutely amazing to me, and I'm shocked by just how many people seem to be complaining about it. What are you guys' thoughts on Eternal?
Slightly less good of a competitive format than Standard because of the swingier. It's a bit swingier.
Says right the guy that likes overpowered decks. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we've spotted the problem here.
I'm having a blast. I said it's slightly less of a good competitive format. If you're only looking at through the lens of competitive, I'm really enjoying playing all these like super high powered decks. I get to play a bunch of different stuff, and it's all good. And what I really like is that I forgot what I was going to say. I had to hold on.
Is it taking a break from Standard? Because I think that's
yes,
nice.
that was what it was. It's just a palette cleanser. It's nice to do something different, right? We've never had that with Runeterra. We've had one game mode forever, and that's it. And now we get to go like boom, and then you get sick. You like learn this format, and then you get kind of sick of it, and then boom, here's all this wacky shit you get to do. Super wide open meta, but maybe you get a little tired of all the extra variants because it's more high powered and it's a bit swingier, and then boom, back to Standard, and then that's just really nice. That's just so cool.
If you're not a competitive player, so there's 2 groups, right? There's the competitive players and then there's non-competitive players. As a non-competitive player, the ability to just switch back and forth with no care for whatever everyone else is playing at any time is phenomenal. I always use my brother as an example. He's the one who introduced me, but he's a very casual player. He's hit Masters and now is like decayed all the way to Iron because he just like doesn't care that much. But he always says it's nice to be able to go between different things and like play what you want. And he's like, what I expect from Eternal is a complete shit show. I expect everything to be like TF Fizz level, where it's like, he's like, that's the way it was in Hearthstone because things just get absolutely wild over time. But he's like, that should be the expectation. Now, honestly, all the complaints that I've read and heard about Eternal all sound like people making regular complaints about a meta that has existed forever, but then just saying it's because it's Eternal.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it actually has to do with Eternal so much as I don't like the decks that are being played and I don't vibe with any of them, so it's Eternal's fault. And I don't think like that's a fair complaint if you don't like the decks, right? Like you don't like these very specific styles of decks, but from a variance perspective and a not variance, a variety perspective, I said at the outset, if you named any archetype in LOR right now and said, give me a deck that I can climb ladder with a 70% win rate with, outside of maybe control, because it kind of gets shut out by Samira Seraphine, I could list one probably for every single type of archetype that you want me to. Whether it's a blazing fast, cheap spell style deck, an aggro burn deck, a mid-range deck, even if you had to play something like Poppy Rally and you wanted to play Demacia, you could probably rip that win rate if you really dedicated yourself to it. So the format itself has lent itself to a lot of these things, but I think people always are naturally frustrated with the meta, so they're just going to put it down that it's because it's Eternal rather than it's because it's something else. That's my perspective on it. I personally love Eternal because I like high power level stuff, and I have a lot more fun when you can play high power level things. I think it allows you to express skill in a very different way, and it raises the gap because you're able to do crazy things that the person who knows how to do the crazy things the most consistently and knows how to play with their outs is going to end up winning more often than not. The matchup roulette thing, sure, in tournament formats, I can understand that. That's a symptom of being in with there being a tier 0 deck in the meta right now. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah, and I mean that happens a little bit more at higher powered formats. Just the nature of the beast. Sometimes someone does their thing, and that's just that's the end of it. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it is people that don't like this meta specifically. And despite it being quite wide open, there are still some things that don't exist for people or types of decks or whatnot. And I think most of the complaints I've seen are probably along those same lines as well.
I think there's all the types of decks kind of, but like not the specific types of decks. So like if someone, if I said, oh man, bro, I don't have like these control decks. Well, someone would be like, well, Broadmain's really good. You play that all the time. And it'd be like, yeah, but it's not like the kind of control I want. And that's
karma.
like, it's not, where's my concussive palms, bro? And that's valid, but it is a bit of a different argument. I saw Sunny made a YouTube video about not liking Eternal. And he was a big like proponent of Eternal before the format like came out. And then I don't want to like boil the entire video down, but a lot of the video was my decks aren't good. He's like, I thought I could play my decks again in Eternal, but they suck. They're just getting things are really, really powerful.
Were his decks ever good to begin with though?
They weren't. You could win with Sunny played a lot of like time bomb printer decks that like weren't like top tier decks, but they were fine. They're like tier 2.5, right? They were decks you could play. But I think like a lot of his complaint seemed to be, it's been a while since I watched the video. I don't want to like talk shit or whatever. But a lot of his complaints seemed to be, I thought I'd be able to do the thing that I enjoyed, but I can't because everything else is so much better than it. And that's like just a normal card game complaint, like that just happens. I think maybe his expectations were just a bit
misaligned with what historically has happened when rotation happens and what Eternal formats in other card games, from my knowledge, have looked like. Or like Legacy and Magic, from what Loserbeam has told me, where it's like just super high power. You get like some wild things going on. And that always happens. It's not, if you want to play those other decks and then be competitive, that's kind of what Standard was for. It's obviously you can't play the old stuff, but Standard was meant to be a lower powered format where things are more predictable. Like what? Ash LeBlanc at one point was a 55% win rate in Standard. You put that thing into Eternal, I'm surprised even without the nerfs that it would hit 40. Like, it's just wildly different.
Yeah, and I bet a lot of people are feeling that way because when I was playing yesterday, I ran into like Zoe Asol, for instance, and I felt bad.
Yeah,
I just felt bad. They dropped a dragon on 7 and they just exploded. I was like, I'm sorry. So I think a lot of people have that feeling.
In favor of higher power formats, because we all like higher power formats, except Jason who likes draft. Like remember we had a seasonal where I was just, I don't know if you remember this, but I was just super upset. Like the whole like week leading up to the seasonal, I was trying to build my lineup and I was just getting like frustrated and upset. And what it ended up being was that like none of the decks were very powerful at the time. Like everything got nerfed, everything got brought down, and I just felt like nothing I was doing was good. But there was nothing in the game that was like super good at that time.
Good.
I think it was like Kane Aatrox was like the best deck.
Yep.
And I was like,
Yeah.
everything sucks. And I was just like,
when
miserable.
you come off of how powerful it was right before the Vayne Aatrox and Bandlebar was nerfed, where you had like 2 tier 0 decks at the same time, and then you go down to that level. That's why I didn't play that season.
Felt
like
bad.
for a big reason. I was like, this sucks. This isn't fun. I was like, I'm just gonna go play TFT. Worlds was the same way. The double Elim bracket.
Yeah, I played
Right when they nerfed Seraphine and Vayne.
Yep.
And I remember talking to every competitive player at the time. Nobody had a clue as to what anything was good because
We're all losing our
everything
mind. Yeah.
felt bad. Like it was all bad. Every deck was just like, ew. How is Cat Gwen the best deck right now? This was like the 5th best deck 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's weird how that can happen. Hey, how there can almost just be no good decks. Like, it seems like you're like, nah, you must just be wrong. Like, when I hear that, I'm like, no, you just haven't found it yet or something. But no, there's just some formats where kind of somehow all the decks just kind of suck. Just because the power level, I guess, just isn't there. And so they all just kind of like dirtle at each other. It's a bunch of just like, I don't know, morphined up fighters just like trying to slap each other. Easy. I just want to win.
You're just praying you draw your one good card in your deck.
That's what it is. There's
You're
like,
like,
one or two good cards, everything else kind of sucks. And you're like, I hope I draw more of mine before you do.
Let me draw my champion, otherwise I'm screwed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here. It's been an hour. Cup, thank you so much for coming on. It's fantastic to watch your run. Since the earliest days of when I came to Legends of Runeterra, you've been one of the members of the community that obviously you have a recognizable name. And you went from being just like some guy in the chat to like the guy that always makes top cut to now the guy that's like fucking making top 4s and finals. It's been absolutely a pleasure to watch your run and your climb up the ranks. And I love your hustle. I love the way you go about things. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for being part of the community.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. All right, that's it for us. Good luck, everyone, this Saturday. We'll see you guys next week. Cup, good luck as well. Try to get that W, okay? Do a little bit better. All right, peace. We're out of here.